Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Uncaged podcast. I am thrilled today to be talking to the amazing Lovelda Vincenzi. Lovelda and I have known each other for a good few years now, and she has been gently cajoling me, trying to get me to get my speaking business started, and we're about to start working together on making that really, really happen. And Lovelda is just such an inspiring, energetic woman who she has so much gumption. I just honestly, going through this episode, you will really see that. And that is what is needed from all of us, but especially from women, if we want to get our voices out there, we want our voices to be heard. And that is what Lovelda is an expert at. She helps women get on stages, and she is passionate about helping women get on stages, and she knows what we need to do in order to get on stages. So I really, really hope that even if you're not a speaker and you have no aspiration to be standing on a stage, that you will go through this episode and listen to this episode and really start to understand that, as in building a speaking business, in life as well, we need to be able to ask for what we want. We need to be able to express what we want, express what we need, and ask for it, and be open and available to negotiate and to find terms in life that work for us as well as the other party. And I really feel like being able to ask for what we want, knowing what we want, having courage, having gumption, and being able to trust ourselves. Those are the key things that come out of this episode. Even if you're not going to go away and apply this to building a speaking business, you could certainly apply it to building any other kind of business that you want to build, or to any other area of life that in which you feel like you really need to step up, you really need to start asking for what you want. So if nothing else, you will come away from this inspired by Lovelda's courage, gumption, and energy. So I really hope that you're going to enjoy this episode. I hope that you get a lot from it. And I'm going to stop talking now and let you dive into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Uncaged podcast. And this week, I am delighted to have with me the wonderful Lovelda Vincenzi, who is a moderator, host, and speaker, amongst many other things. So welcome, Lovelda.
Hey, this is so exciting. Like, you've got a podcast and I'm on it.
I know. I'm so happy that you've agreed to be on the podcast. I know this is going to be such an interesting episode for people. So I think the best place to start really is about you. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do what you do? So I'll hand over to you to give your introductions.
Sure. I have like two primary roles to the business that I have. So I started off as an MC, moderator, and host, and I still do that. It's fancy terms for saying at conferences, I'm that person who hypes up the audience, keeps things to time, keeps things flowing, moderating conversations on panels, and I absolutely love it. It's like my idea of fun. I get all of the joy of hosting without any of the organization.
Yeah.
So it's
and you do an amazing job at it. You really do.
I went for the organization and the hosting, and I realized the hosting's more fun for me. I don't have to do any of the event organizing. So I was doing that for, I think I was probably even just about a year or so in, and I was at an event. In fact, I think it was, I'm not sure if you were at that particular event. I know you were definitely there the second year I did it. And somebody jumps on stage, all female event, one of the audience members, we were having a panel discussion. One of the audience members asked a really innocent question about speaking and getting on stages. And by this point, I'd done enough events to notice that at the higher level events, the bigger stages where there were like 4,000, 5,000 people in the room, the number of women on those stages just always seemed to be so disproportional to the number of men. And it was winding me up a bit because I thought, I know so many incredible women who say that they speak a lot. So what's missing here? Like, why aren't these organizers doing more? So when this poor woman, and I don't know what her name was, asked this question, I accidentally ended up on my own soapbox saying, you ladies, you need to get out. You need to show up in the world. And I was probably about 3 minutes into this monologue before I caught myself, remembered this was not my event. The question wasn't really directed at me. and I was supposed to be moderating a conversation. So shortly afterwards, it really stuck with me. And about 2 or 3 days later, I posted a post on Facebook, which I hadn't been using at all. I'd kind of fallen out of love with it. So my Facebook page was kind of a bulletin board of everybody else's stuff. You know, we just keep getting tagged and stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's posting their own stuff on my page. None of it's mine. So the algorithm hates me at this point. And I put a post out saying, and I think it was one of those ones on a plain background, and it said something like, why is it you think there aren't more women on high level stages? Because I was curious. And I had about 100 comments, which is insane given I wasn't using my profile at all. And as I read through them, there were some of the normal ones, you know, imposter syndrome, you know, women really struggle to speak up and we're not as good as sales. And there were all of those sorts of things. And then there were a handful in there that really caught my attention. And those ones went something along the lines of women are harder to find. And so therefore it's more difficult for organizers to put them on stages. And I thought, what a load of rubbish. I genuinely did not believe it. I thought, what a load of rubbish. I know loads of women. They're speakers, they're business owners. What do you mean you can't find them? So I accidentally ended up, I started a Facebook group initially. I called it World Class Female Speakers because it needed a name. And the premise was, hey, ladies, I don't know if you know this, but apparently we're really difficult to find. And I don't believe this. So I figure if we're looking for them and they're looking for us, if we put our heads together, we could probably figure this out. And that was really why I started it. Anyway, fast forward a few weeks and I'm putting posts in there like, okay, cool. Maybe we can help each other grow our YouTube channels. Why doesn't everybody post their show reel? And I had a really engaged group of ladies and then I'd just get crickets. I was like, what the hell? Why is everybody really quiet? And one of my friends said to me, Lovelda, I don't think they have any video. I think they just might not have any. And I was like, huh? That doesn't make any sense. So the more I dived into it, it then became very clear to me why so many organizers were struggling to find female speakers. And that was our sales and marketing, for want of a better term, was underwhelming, rubbish, or non-existent, right? It just wasn't doing us any justice. We're not putting ourselves out there to speak. We're not putting ourselves forward. If I looked on people's profiles, there was nothing that said they spoke. There was none of the social proof. Like all of that kind of business structure was just missing. And so I found that I accidentally ended up starting a speaker coaching business for women, focusing on the business of speaking. So I support women in finding game-changing paid speaking opportunities so they can increase their impact, influence, and income. Because I believe if we can get more female voices on high-level stages, in boardrooms, etc., we just end up with a better world if there's more diversity. And so that's how I ended up fighting the give women more voices diversity battle, but less from the perspective of asking others to do things for us, and more from the perspective of how can we better show up and make it easier for those organizers. And thankfully, there are more and more of them who are insisting upon having a much more balanced conversation from different perspectives, gender, various different backgrounds. They're looking for that. But which means if we could do our part, it's a lot easier for us to be found. So that's sort of my mission, and it all kind of falls under a broader mission of empowering or unlaunching authentic, powerful female voices. And so I do that in various different ways. I have my own podcast, a TV show, various different programs. I MC, I speak, but all of them are all about kind of getting the voices of creating spaces where women's voices can be heard more and making it easier for women who have voices and a message and have an impact to be paid well for that and be able to show up in the right places.
I think like you were just saying, it's like now, especially now, like people are actually looking for female speakers. So it really is a case of if we can make it easy for them. And I know we've done a little bit of work together, okay, so does this profile really tell somebody that you are a speaker? No. So, that needs to be sorted out. But I think as well, I don't know whether you've encountered this, or just, I guess maybe this is my own experience when I was thinking about, why aren't there more women on stages? And So I used to really hate doing presentations. When my first presentations in corporate, I was like a rabbit in headlights, like, you know, like standing still, don't move. And gradually, I'm actually really grateful for having that grounding in corporate. I never got trained to do anything at all. I just got stuck up there with a PowerPoint. That was it. Off you go. But I got more used to it. And then when I started presenting on things that I really loved, that I was passionate about, then I was like, give me an audience, put me up there, like get the full attention on me, and I'm a happy girl. But there's a part of me that, because so many people, like, the number one fear, I suppose, is of public speaking, there's a part of me that thinks I shouldn't like this. Like, it's a bit big-headed to enjoy being on a stage. And to say, yeah, give me a microphone, an audience, and it's a subject that I'm passionate about, and I'm perfectly happy to stand in front of as many people as you want. And I don't know if that's something that you've also encountered with women, this kind of almost like a modesty, like I shouldn't want to be the center of attention. I don't know if you've ever encountered that.
Not personally, but that might be because I'm quite similar to you. I was that kid who, at school, if there was a play or a debate, or I was the crazy person who was like, pick me, you know.
Yeah.
And I always got the roles predominantly because nobody else wanted to do it. So I didn't realize that people have this fear of getting on stages. What I do find is sometimes that women are so focused on a message and an impact and a change that the thinking behind the commercialization of that is just not quite so clear. So one of the biggest myths I'm like, please let me help me dispel this myth. I have a lot of women who are like, I really want to tell my story. And that's commendable. And I think there's power in stories, but there's no storytelling course. And even motivational speakers are not booked for their stories. They're booked for the impact, and they're booked for their message. And what the stories help do is amplify those messages. And so what I find is often, for a lot of the women that I work with, because they don't identify as speakers, they're business owners who speak, and you know, they keep being invited to do it. And most of them are kind of like, it's kind of fun though, I quite like it, but nobody pays me for this. Like, it's this side thing I'm doing. It has never occurred to them that it could be a paid thing, right? It just hasn't occurred to them that this thing they're doing for free, people actually have whole businesses wrapped around it, right? So I don't think that it's necessarily that they're not excited about it, but sometimes their focus is not on making it a commercial enterprise. It's a side gig. It's something they do for fun. They quite enjoy it. And I'm like, why don't you enjoy it and get paid? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. Like, when the things, I guess it's conditioning, I think societal conditioning, that our work and what we do to get paid should be tough, it should be hard, we shouldn't really enjoy it very much. So there's like an element of, where's the catch? Like, this is too easy. I like this, I'm good at this, and I could get paid for this. I think it's quite interesting that I guess men, just in your experience of working or seeing more men, is that they just really more naturally see it as a business?
I think it depends on where you start, right? So I tend to work with female business owners who, as a result of their business, tend to get pulled into speaking. And the difference, part of the reason I think that I got so much traction with my emceeing so quickly is because at the time, I had zero interest in coaching. I was like, I'm done with this coaching malark. Like, I don't want to create any more events. I don't want any masterminds. Like, I want no Facebook groups. I just want to speak. I just want to MC. That's it. And so for me, from the get-go, it was a business. Like, it wasn't a side something, it was a business, because it was like, this is the thing I'm doing. So I have to have a good product, which means I need to make sure I'm skilled at this. And fortunately for me, I was just naturally attracting a lot of people who were asking me. So I'm like, well, why don't I just go with the path of least resistance? And when I say naturally attracting, some of my first paid engagements were from people who found me on LinkedIn, and we had zero connections. Like, zero mutual friends, zero connections. To this day, I'm kind of like, how did y'all find me? Like, and I wasn't even talking about emceeing. So maybe they were taking a punt. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. At least one of them is still a a long-term client of mine, and I do a lot of work with them. You know, pretty much I'm like one of their go-to MCs, and I love working with them. It's been really beautiful. But because it was coming so easily, I just thought, what if I tell the world this is what I do? Like, what if I actually just for a year or two play full out and tell people this is what I do? And so I worked it out like that. So the same strategies that most of my clients use for building their coaching and consulting businesses, I just happened to apply them to speaking. So I did videos on, but my audience for those were speaker bookers. So why would you want a speaker, a professional MC versus a speaker to be your MC? Like, what sort of qualities should you be looking for if you're hiring an MC? I mean, I tested and played with all sorts of different things, but fundamentally it was a business. And I think I think often men naturally think a little bit more commercially. When I've come across women who are speaking, it genuinely hasn't occurred to them to ask for a fee often. And my mind kind of boggles. I'm like, so I have people who say, oh, I keep getting these engagements and none of them are paid. And, so how do I find paid speaking gigs? I say, okay, well, hold on a minute. So you're getting people asking you to speak already. Cool. So let's just, for argument's sake, say you had 10 people ask you in the last month. Of those 10, how many of them did you ask for a fee? And normally at that point, they're kind of like, I could have asked. And I'm like, well, if I'm to assess whether the problem is that you're attracting paid speaking engagements, or the problem, is it that these people have no budget? Or is it that, in which case it's the wrong fit? Or is it that they don't pay somebody like you? So what was the result of those conversations? I can tell you about 99% of the time, the conversation never happened.
Yeah.
Just never happened. And I think that's the telling thing with women. It didn't occur to them to even say, how am I going to be financially rewarded for this? They were kind of like, oh, cool, an audience.
Yeah. And I think, like when you're just starting, like when I think about when I first started doing little speaking gigs, it was a little networking events, and it was like, excellent, I can practice. Like I can get in front of 10 women, it's quite safe, I can practice, see whether I like it. But once you've done that a few times and you like see that it's pretty well received, actually, then I think it's like time to start thinking about, okay, I really need to be either in front of my ideal audience who potentially are going to buy whatever it is that I have to sell, or being paid. Thank you very much, for my time. And yeah, I know as well, you teach people, you give people so much great advice about how to negotiate all of everything that goes with a speaking gig. And if I think back to when I did a gig for the Women in Finance Europe conference, a speaking gig in Amsterdam. And now when I look back at it, I'm like, really did not get enough like out of them or that, like to warrant going to Amsterdam. I think I got £150 expenses.
Get out.
That was it. And this is like a massive conference, like thousands of women. I mean, I think I probably had about I don't know, like 50, 75, I don't know, something like that in my talk in particular. But you look back and be like, okay, so potentially my ideal audience, maybe I could say, okay, I'll waive my fee, but you have to fully cover my travel expenses if you want me to come to Amsterdam. So yeah, definitely some lessons learned around just valuing, like, yeah, if you want me to come and speak at your event, and valuing your time, valuing your expertise enough to actually say, you're going to pay. Like, I wouldn't do a full day's corporate work and say, oh, I'll just do it for free today, don't worry. Like,
yeah, it makes me giggle, because when people are like, oh, I don't know if I can ask, and how much can I ask for, and what if they don't have the money? And I'm like, listen, especially for coaches, I go, how is it your problem whether or not they have the money? So you have a client who pays, and you have other people who could also benefit, but they're not going to pay your fee. And you have other ways of, you either choose to give them your time, you put them in a group program, some other way of engaging with them, right? So it's kind of like, if a potential coaching client came to you, and let's say your fees, the program you're selling them is a couple of grand, and they don't have the money, do you then give them the program for free? But that's what we do with our speaking.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't. You either give them something totally different. Okay, fine, go and do an online program instead, or come and join a free group that I've got. You put them in something else where you can continue to nurture, but not you don't give them the 2K program for free because they don't have the money. You don't take the 2K program and then discount it to 500 quid because they don't have the money. You don't do that. But we'll do it with our speaking. We'll kind of go, oh, they don't have budget, so I'll do it for free. And I'm not one to say that speaking for free is bad. Actually, I think those are incredible marketing opportunities for entrepreneurs when done correctly and evaluated properly. One of the first international gigs I did, they didn't really pay very much, to be honest. I think I negotiated it. In fact, there was hardly any negotiation. It was a brand new event. They didn't have much budget, but there was enough money in there that I could get myself there. I could cover my travel and accommodation and all of that stuff whilst I was there. But afterwards, there really wasn't any money left for me, right? So it didn't cost me any money, but in terms of cash in my bank account, it made me nothing either.
Yeah.
However, I hadn't spoken internationally really up until that point. I hadn't really, I could kind of pull it and say, oh, I spoke online and that was international, but I really had not had a client in another country that had asked me to come to speak since I declared myself as an MC. I could have pulled on things I'd done prior, but not since I'd officially declared myself as an MC. And so I thought, well, this is a great opportunity. It was an audience of 4,000 people at an incredible venue. And I thought, well, I haven't done an event of this scale before, so this will be interesting, right? I haven't done something like this. I'm looking at the lineup of speakers and I just thought, this feels like a good event for me to hook myself to. What I really needed was the social proof afterwards to demonstrate I'd done it, so that every other booking became easier. So for me, even though that in itself didn't pay, I got 15 testimonials from it. I got video footage of me on stage. I had about 4 or 5 inquiries immediately whilst I was there from people who were watching me, because there were other moderators. I had a lot of people who were like, we're doing events too. It led to the event that I ended up doing with Monica Lewinsky, because one of the speakers who I connected with was the friend of one of the organizers of the event that Monica Lewinsky was at, and they needed an MC and she recommended me. So even though that event in itself didn't pay, even if the other events hadn't come from it, it opened up so many doors. But I went with a plan.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's what I love, how strategic, and you bring the strategy to it, and like almost open up women's eyes, like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to have some kind of strategy behind, like there has to be something in it for me. Like, what's in it for me? And looking at being able to assess, okay, money just about covers it, but potential opportunities that it could open up.
And it's, what are the steps I need to take to access those, right?
Yeah.
The most frustrated women who come to me are the ones who've been speaking for ages and collected 0 video footage. And I'm kind of going, so you want to go out now and tell the market that you're a 5-figure speaker, but you have no evidence of it at all.
Yeah.
You have no testimonials. You have no video footage of you delivering. We can't, it's going to be really difficult to build a whole profile of this when you don't have the content. Or you're going to tell me that you want to have a 5-figure or a mid to high 4-figure speaking fee, but you've got this grainy footage that was taken on a phone in a pub. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, it just undermines what you're saying you're worth. You can't even tell me you got the testimony, you worked with a large organization. Maybe they wouldn't let you film it, but did somebody senior have something great to say that they're willing for you? No, you didn't get that. So you've got 0 proof.
Yeah. And it comes back to like what you were saying about the fee. It's about asking. Like, I've done it myself. Like, I've come away from massive things, and like, I should have been asking everybody in that room for a testimonial, not just like the one organizer person. It should have been like across the board. And even when I've done a follow-up and I haven't got anything back as regards giving me a testimonial for speaking, it should be like following up again and again, and like making it a real priority to like get that testimonial on my website, especially if I've done something for free. Like I did something for the BBC, and I followed up, did not get a testimonial, and then just dropped it, I guess because there's that fear of like, maybe they didn't like it and they thought it was rubbish. Like, well,
I make some of my stuff contingent on you giving me a testimonial. It's in my contract. I don't even play. I'm like, listen, you want me to give my time up? You know what will make it really valuable for me? I need a senior member of staff to give me a testimonial within 3 days of completion of the engagement. Like, I put timeframes on it. I do not play.
No messing around.
And the reason for that is I have chased people for literally 6 months for video footage. And after a while, I thought this is insufficient and it doesn't work because I've had an assumption about something. You know what? I'm going to contract it. And sometimes I've taken it so far to say, your discount is contingent on you providing X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do it within X amount of time, you will receive an invoice because you forfeited this part of the agreement. Like, I will go that far. Trust me, people pull their finger out and get things done when it's in writing. It just happens a lot better, because that's what we agreed to. And I'll remind them. But I like to do things within the period. So I have literally finished calls with people before and said, oh, have you got a few minutes? Should we just record a testimonial right now? Why am I going to let you get off the call and then I said, you're busy. We don't want another thing on a list of things to do. We're here now. Now, especially if I've got it in video and I've got it live, you're in the energy of it. You haven't gone away and gone, hi. People struggle, especially non-speakers, to get their energy up outside of an event. So if we've just done a Zoom and you're still here, or I'm having a post meeting with you, look, we're on Zoom, I have the ability to record. I'll just be like, look, can we just do it right now? Do you not it's only going to take, I'm not looking for 15 minutes. It's like 30 seconds. You don't need to say very much. Can we do it right now? Do you mind? Okay, cool, go. I'm just going to hit record. I'll put myself on mute and I just let them record. And I've got testimonials that way before. Export it from Zoom. That's all I need. I think we can overcomplicate these things, but it's learning. It takes a bit of courage. Don't get me wrong. I remember the first couple of times I was there with my phone at events and I'm like this, do you mind handshaking, giving me a review, because I normally take my husband with me, but I knew I needed that. And I'd rather get good at asking for it so that when I really needed it, I didn't want that with a big name. So I'd rather do that and get comfortable with it with somebody who, because not all testimonials are equal, right? So I'd rather do it with, and they're all useful, but some of them just have more weighting. It's like, because certain names in certain positions giving you a review just has a bigger weighting. So for me, I thought I'd rather just get over this irrational fear in front of somebody where if the testimonial isn't great, I'm not going to be kicking myself. But I'll be damned if I want to be in front of the ex-CEO of Unilever, who's a huge name in the industry, and I can't capture a shit hot testimonial. That's not going to work for me. Like, that's not a time for me it's not a dress rehearsal now, y'all. I need a good one where, especially if you said something good, I need to have worked out that, oh, heck, Lovelda, you need to double check the audio. I need to have done all of those mistakes, testimonials, where I'm not going to be kicking myself afterwards, looking at it going, I've got the video, but I don't know what he said.
Unless I can lip read. No, I mean, I'm so glad you said it takes courage, because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, Lovelda, I need some of your gumption. But so to say it takes courage, and also that kind of reflection that, like, you didn't start where you are now, as in, with like these contracts in place, like giving them, stipulating exactly what you require. It's something that you had to start somewhere and like move yourself to this place, which I guess is it's like anything in life, right? We have to actually start and do something 1 or 2 times, and then it actually becomes like our normal to ask for that.
And you learn as you go, right? My contracts were not this robust. I laugh with people that some of my contracting terms, there's one contract term which I ended up calling the feed me clause. So when I'm moderating, It's known to me as the feed me clause, all right? It's not actually called,
Yeah, it's not written like,
right?
feed
That's
me.
not, yeah, it's not in there. But the reason I added this is because the contract used to say like food, travel, accommodation, all of that sort of stuff. But what I found was, I remember doing one event, it was 2 days, and they said that they had food for speakers. Now, there's a real distinction between your speakers and your moderators. And so a speaker comes in, they deliver their content, and then they're free to go at that point. Your moderator has got to be available to everybody for the duration of the event, because otherwise, and when people say, oh no, you just need to be there, I'm like, listen, if I went off to go and do something and nobody knew about it and something went down, are you going to be okay with that? No. So you're really going to want me to be fully present for the whole time, because things change during an event. You don't want your moderators disappearing, which means that my food needs to be provided, right? And I remember doing this event and they'd said that food was provided, and literally they had a lounge for they had like a green room lounge for all the speakers where they take them, and it had teas and coffees and pastries and those sorts of things. That's not food, okay? I didn't eat properly for 2 days. I was hungry as all hell, right? I was so bad that when because they did an event in the evening and they told me there was going to be food at that event and it was finger food, I was hangry and angry, right? And I thought, shame on me, I didn't clarify, right? There was food of sorts, and it was a piece of my feedback to them, which is understand your moderators, how you feed your moderators and how you feed your speakers. It would have been fine if I was a speaker. I would have been very happy with it. Something
quick
there,
snack, off you
quick
go.
snack, away you go. But after a while, 2 days of eating snacks, I needed a meal. Because I was up early, I wasn't really doing breakfast before I left. The snacks were fine. And then I had the whole day, and then they had an evening party. So I really just didn't eat any proper food for 2 days. Voila, a la feed me clause. This is where it came from. It was my learning. So now the clause says, if I'm doing a full event, you are responsible for feeding me, providing a full meal for me at lunchtime. You're responsible for making sure that food, proper food, a sandwich or something tangible is available for me to eat. And if not, you need to let me know in advance such that I can provide food and I'll invoice you for it. And when I do my prep meetings, I now ask, how is food being dealt with? Because I need to be sustained, because otherwise I can't do my best job. But I say that because I didn't start there. That was not a clause I had before. I thought just saying, you're covering my food and accommodation would be fine. No. I needed to be more specific. I need you to know it's your responsibility to feed me at certain times, because otherwise I'm just not going to be able to cope. And I need to understand how close other food outlets are, because it's just not fair to me to not be able to eat.
No. And it's not ideal for them either if their moderator keels over on stage from lack of food, or from just eating sugar for like 2 days straight.
It's pretty much what I was running off, caffeine and sugar. It's like this.
And it's what strikes me there is that's really about knowing what your needs are, knowing and not being afraid to ask for them to be met. I feel like this whole conversation is coming around to, do not be afraid to ask. Like, know what you need, know what you want, and do not be afraid to ask for it.
And follow up to make sure it's followed through as well. Like, be really clear. I'll have people say, oh, I'm going to do this event for the video footage. I'm like, put that in your contract.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
not just through email trails, like put anything you assume or you're expecting and anticipating to receive from an event as a speaker, put it in your contract. And there's a number of reasons for that, but it's particularly important in corporate organizations where your points of contact can change.
Yeah.
And I worked in sales. If it's not in the contract, we don't necessarily need to honor it. I could tell you, having been the other side of that,
Yeah.
when people have left and the client's like, oh, but we're like, okay, show us the contract. And it's normally been something we used to do to get out of things we should never have committed to.
Yeah.
But the only real commitment is if you can show it to me somewhere in writing. And ideally, you'd show it to me in a contract, and then we'd have to honor it because that's what we contracted to do. But
Yeah.
outside of a contractual agreement, it becomes a little bit more fluffy, especially if people have moved and the organization shifts. You've got one thing in place and then somebody else comes in and they have a different mission or a different vision, and now what you thought you were going to get, you're not getting anymore because you never contracted to that. Anything outside of the contract is a goodwill gesture. Everything in the contract is what's committed.
Yeah. I mean, like, just having a contract, that would be like a step of progress, like on my part, certainly. Like, just
I'm
having a contract,
contracts, yeah,
would be a good start. For why do you think it is that I'm assuming most women, when they start out in this, do not have contracts for speaking? And like you say, like as a coach, for instance, I always had coaching agreements. How would I not have a coaching agreement? So why, when I get asked to do speaking, do I just like do a little email exchange and that's good enough? That's fine. Do you feel like it's maybe like fear of being seen as too strident or too demanding, or what do you think it is about not having a contract in place that...
I think sometimes people just haven't considered it. Some of it is fear. I actually think most of it is people just haven't thought it through. For me, what I find helpful, look, it's one thing to not have a contract when it's a one-to-one engagement, because it's almost a little bit easier. Like, we know what was said.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with multiple people, to me, the contract is about absolute clarity about what we're committing to on both sides. And I think speakers, let COVID be a message to you. Those of you who haven't had contracts, you literally have no ground to stand on. It's got me out of so much trouble with some of my engagements. If I was expecting money to come through, what happens if the event doesn't go ahead? The contract is there for the what ifs. I've had people before who've, it's their first time event. Now, what happens if they don't make the numbers and now they're not doing that event, but they've paid me a deposit? Whose deposit is that? Am I expected to give that back to you? Because my reasonable and your reasonable might be two different things and opposing. And what it helps is to be able to be clear on what was agreed. And because I had speaker contracts, when all these meetings were being, like, events were being pulled, what did we do? We went back to the contracts, because what's happening? Everybody's kind of wanting to scramble to save themselves. My contracts were always abundantly clear. I take a 50% deposit up front, and that is non-refundable. And people forget what you said.
Yeah.
They just forget what you've said. I can't remember conversations I had 3 weeks ago, let alone a year ago in some of these cases, what we agreed to. And so it was always very clear. These are the payment dates. These are the payment terms. And the only reason that I would be responsible for returning those funds, that deposited money, was if I failed to show up for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Like, if I and it specifically said if I failed to show up due to illness or something like that. Now, in most cases, the one case where it was kind of a little bit iffy, it wasn't that I couldn't show up. It was that they chose not to take me on because our contract was they were responsible for my travel and accommodation. And what got introduced was quarantine periods. So the cost to them would have been prohibitive.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've agreed what to do going forward. I've not kind of said, tough luck, I'm out. What I've done is I've given them a credit line until such time as we can do those events, because it's a great client of mine. But it's very clear in writing that deposit is non-refundable for these reasons. I haven't invoiced them further, but I've said, this is your credit, here's a credit note, and making sure that stuff is in writing, because if my contact leaves, then what?
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be in fancy pants language. My speaking contract's 2 pages, and most of one of them is a big table that just explains, the date, the location, what I've agreed to, how many hours, how many days, because it'll be silly things like, they want to have 15 different pre-calls. No, you get one. I mean, people do some of the most ridiculous things, or they want to, a new clause I heard recently that some bureaus have brought in is an administrative fee for changing the contract. Because what's happening now with some event organizers is they just keep kicking the event into the long grass. So they've said, for every time we've got to shift this flipping contract, you're going to have to pay an admin fee for us to update the contract. So now you're going to think twice about how many times you come to us to change things in this agreement. So the contract terms are more about kind of thinking, what is a reasonable way of behavior and how do we deal with certain things? And what I found is just having them clear. Sometimes I've sent contracts to people, and even though I've explained something on the phone, when they've read it in writing, they've gone, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I've gone, okay, cool. Let's have a conversation about that. What works? Or that second payment doesn't work well for me. Okay, that's fine. What does? And provided it sits well with us, then we'll change it accordingly. So it allows you to clarify that you've both got the same understanding about what you're both committing to and what happens if things change.
Yeah. And it strikes me that it's really about like valuing yourself enough to put all of these parameters in place and say, this is actually what's okay for me. It's almost like boundaries, but in speaking contract terms. This is what's going to work for me. So, does this work for you? And then you've got like a starting point to actually have that negotiation from. So it's really interesting that although all of this is quite it's quite business-like. It's, you wouldn't necessarily think of it in terms of boundaries or valuing yourself, but actually that's what really sits behind all of this is this, let me not be a people pleaser. Let me kind of say, this is what I think I'm worth, not just in having contracts in place, but also in deciding what your fee is, which is a whole other topic. How the hell do you pick your fee? And yeah, having the courage, having that self-belief and the self-worth to be able to put all of these things in place. So I mean, this is what you help women do, right? It's like, okay, you've got a topic, you can speak, it's of interest to people, but got to put all of these other things in place in order for it to actually become a viable business and for you to not be constantly giving your time away for free.
Yeah, it's moving from a side hustle or a hobby to a business. And it's, effectively what I help people do is implement the business structures, strategies, processes, documents, etc., such that you have a speaking business. And and it's very similar to any other business, but there's specifics, for each industry about what what would you expect a standard in a speaking contract is not going to be the same as a coaching agreement. There's just different things that you need to be aware of, right? What you put on your website as a speaker versus a coach versus a consultant versus a shop, they're just different sort of structures in terms of what's possible. And because I've been in the industry for a while and the unique position I'm in, so I've hosted events, I'm represented by organizers. I did a conference where we did a whole awards ceremony for speakers. So I kind of got myself very connected in. And emceeing means I get to understand what organizers want a lot more. But I've also read a hell of a lot of speaker bios because every time I go on stage, I mean, for some events, it's like 30 or 40 bios. To do introductions. So I get to see which ones am I actually really excited about and which ones do I think, yeah. And if people are reading your stuff and they're kind of like, you're probably not going to get very far with it. So I feel like I've got a very unique perspective in terms of where all of these things come together. And because for me, it was always a business. It was never a side hustle. It was, I think I had a different perspective when people, oh yeah, but I don't have the money. I'm like, well, that's how much it is. Maybe come back next year when you've got some budgets. But what I would say to that for people who are like nervous about the pricing and what if they say no, you're never nervous if you're busy.
Yeah.
If you have a
Yeah.
lot of opportunities, losing this one isn't that deep.
That's the thing, is that's where the fear, the nervousness comes from. It has to, is from, if I don't get this one, then like I'm never going to get another one, or there aren't any others in the pipeline. And like you say, when you're busy, then
Well, when you
you
have a pipeline, this is the other thing.
exactly.
Like, do you
Yeah.
actually have a pipeline? But when you build it and you can kind of go, look, the bigger your pipeline is, you're kind of waiting for people to say no. I have a client I'm working with at the moment. I'm setting all of her strategies up. And the space that she's in is really unique. So she's just inundated, right? So we're setting the systems up because she's kind of like, I can't scale because everything's so customized. So we're, really putting all the back end systems in. And after our last session, she went away and it was like 14 people she had to contact. And that were inbound leads predominantly,
Wow.
like 14 of them. And she sent this message out. So we crafted the message that was basically, this is what I offer, and here's an indicative price for them. Which one of these would you like to progress with? And she goes, Lovelda, 7 of them just came back and said it's out of their budget. And I've never seen somebody look so bloody relieved. And the reason she's relieved is because she's like, I just need people to say no. I can't have all of these people saying yes to me because I simply don't have the capacity to jump on 1,500 calls. So I love that I have a system that 14 people are interested and 7 of them self-select out with 1 email. And what it says to me is, if you don't have the flow, then those 14, each of them means so freaking much to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in any business, if you have a lot of traffic coming through, it's not to say you're never going to convert at 100% anyway, all of the time. It's just not going to happen. Most people's conversion is just not at that level. You can do things along the scale to convert better, but ultimately, the more people you're talking to, the less pressure there is on this one conversation. You don't need it to save you.
Yeah. So I guess like the next question comes up then is, how do people get that pipeline? Where do they start? I mean, I know this is like a massive, massive question. But like from your experience, like what are the things that really just get the ball rolling for people in building that pipeline?
Simplify it. I mean, I'll say the biggest question I get from people is, how do I find speaking engagements? And often my next question is, what have you done so far? To which I get nothing. So I'm like, so really, this isn't even that you've gone out to look for speaking gigs. You just haven't even thought about it, and you've just assumed it's going to be really complicated, right?
Yeah.
So the simplest place for people to start is within your existing network. If I said to you, by the end of the month, or in the next 4 weeks, I need you to have at least 15 conversations about getting on stage, you could probably find those conversations. Because within your network, if you really sat down and thought, who do I know who's already speaking? Like, who do I know in my network that can support my goal of getting on stages? That means they either own a stage themselves, they help other people get on stages. So maybe they run bureaus or they run events. They are doing the thing you want to do. So they were familiar with stages. So they speak quite a lot themselves. They have a stage, and when I say they have a stage, it could be an event organizer, it could be a networking event you've been to before. It could be a company you want to speak at, and somebody works at that company, or somebody knows somebody who works at the company. There are all of these conversations you could have that would get the ball moving. Now, one of 2 things happens. Either you get booked straight away, or you learn some really valuable information.
Yeah.
And if you learn something, what it means is the next conversation becomes better. So you get to know, oh, okay, I would love to speak at that company, but this team never hires. So great, I will just get that they don't ever bring people on. Or the way that they work, their selection criteria is X, Y, and Z, and I meet 2 of those criteria, but I don't meet the 3rd one. Does that not move you forward? I think for most of us, we get so bamboozled into thinking it's really complicated. And actually, if we had to do it, like if we had to get on stages in the next 4 weeks, people in your network that can support you with that mission. That doesn't mean that they necessarily own the stage, but they may own it themselves. They may know somebody who does. They may have access to be able to. I've had friends of mine, I've sent them messages just to get the name and the email address of people at certain places. because they're inside. They work there. It doesn't matter what role they have. They can access the network and find the name and the email address of an individual. They're like, Lovelda, keep it stump. You never heard it from me. I'm like, I didn't hear it from you, boo.
Again, it comes down to asking and gumption. Like, you've got to have a little bit of gumption to like get this thing moving. And also is that kind of moving out of the fear of getting the no and into going into it with curiosity. Like, I wonder what might happen if I speak to this person. And, you know, and it's for me following those nudges. Like, I had a conversation completely unrelated to my speaking business with somebody a while ago, and they worked at Amazon, and they just mentioned that they were doing this, you know, women's thing within Amazon, and there was just this glimmer of maybe I should ask. And then this morning again, like I was doing a meditation, and just that memory popped into my mind, like, I really need to go back and find that woman who works at Amazon and just ask, like, could you connect me with somebody?
Yeah, could you tell me more about how that works? Are they looking for somebody right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing I think we often forget, especially when we're within our own network, is these are people who know, like, and trust us. They want to help.
Yeah.
They genuinely want to help. It's actually no skin off their nose for you to go to them. Like, I'm doing some work at the moment, speaking on inclusive meetings, and a really close friend of mine is an HR strategist and an HR consultant. She knows lots of companies, right? I want to have a pulse for this idea that I've got. Do you think it's going to flow? And whether she can put me in front of somebody straight away or not, she can certainly help me to get there faster than if I was to sit and practice out for myself, because she's working with these people all the time. She's in and out of corporations. I'm not anymore. You know, I haven't been in a company for 3 years, right? So my pulse, and even then I was in smaller companies, not large corporates, which are the ones I'm going for. I haven't been in a large corporate for about 10 years. My idea, I don't know what they're looking for right now. I can hazard many guesses, but even things like the languaging, I want to call it X, and she's like, the term that's going around now is this one. I'm like, okay, let me write that down. Because the next time I speak about it, now I'm speaking in the language that's going to work. I would rather know that now rather than later. And often we don't do some of that legwork. And it's not necessarily about having 100% answer. It's about having those conversations to say, look, this is something I'm playing at the moment, and I'm wondering if there's some way you can help. And sometimes I've got a couple of people that are like, when you're ready, when you've got X, Y, and Z ready, let me know. And it's getting clearer and clearer and clearer the more people I'm in discussion with. We don't create, you know, if you're a coach, you do not create great coaching products, great coaching services in a vacuum in your head.
No.
Doesn't happen.
No.
They get really good because you go out, you talk to your clients, or you talk to your potential clients, and sometimes you lose some deals. But what you learn from losing those deals is I could have won it if I'd put this bit of information at the front rather than telling it later on, because I didn't communicate my message effectively. Or 3 people say no for the same reason, and you tweak it a little bit because you get, well, that's missing. And they're perfect for me clients. So what frustrates me sometimes is this idea of, when it comes to speaking, I'm going to go and craft my talk and I'm going to get a perfect talk. And I'm like, great, who's buying it? Who's buying it? You've got this wonderful product, but who's going to buy it? And that's the bit that I focus on. It's like the who's going to buy it? How do you position it? And I think as women, often we spend so much time focusing on the content, which I'm not knocking, and the delivery style, which is important. But to have a brilliant product that you don't know how to sell does not make it a business.
Yeah. And I think that's like you say, it's important to like be the best speaker that you can be, and you know, have the best content. But I guess one of the things that I'm still obviously building my speaking business, but there's that temptation I need to learn how to be a better speaker. And I was like, do I? Is that really the most important thing right now? Because it seems to be going pretty well. Like, it's fine. Nobody's complained. In fact, people are saying it's pretty good. So actually, I don't think that's what the big issue is. You know, that's probably just an excuse. not to be like going out there and maybe doing the things that feel a little bit more difficult, which is having those conversations, being, you know, being willing to ask for what you want, and to learn instead of, you know, always worrying about getting that instant yes, being willing to go out there and learn about, how do I refine this, how do I make this marketable, instead of trying to stick to exactly the title that I want it to have.
I mean, I compare it very often to coaching. It's the difference between the coach who's like, okay, so I've done NLP and now I'm going to go and learn hypnosis. And then there's this other course that's coming out, and they're trained.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a therapist and a coach and a psychotherapist. And then I went and did a degree in this and I've got NLP, and they're making no money.
Yeah.
It's not the education. It's not that you've got all of these skills in and of itself. And then you get another person who did a 2-day course and they're just out helping people, and it drives people bloody crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's right. I think we should all continue to learn our craft.
Yes,
I still push
sure.
myself to get better at speaking.
Yeah.
I'm still pushing myself to improve that. But if nobody's buying it, what is the point of pushing myself to get better, to be an unknown talent?
Yeah. 100%. So I know that you're currently offering something that might just help people with, or at least I think you are, unless you filled your program completely.
Yeah, it's new, hot off the press. So I have a few programs that I do. I have a program that's purely around nailing your speaking niche, and we just really dive into who pays for this, who's the best person for you to go to, and what's your business speaking strategy, because there's different types of speaking businesses. Then I have a really comprehensive program that is Find Speaking Gigs Accelerator. And we literally go through the whole thing. I teach you how to find the engagements, whether that's cold or warm. We set your business systems up. Like, I mean, I pretty much give you all of my expertise in that program. And this time round, I was kind of sitting thinking, what do I do in the middle? Because when I do the niching program, it's brilliant. And people have absolute clarity on how to position their business in totality and make speaking work for their business. But I then don't go on to teach you like how to find those engagements, because that's a different program. And the thing with the full program is, especially now, women are kind of like, oh, frick, I'm totally overloaded.
Yeah.
So I created a middle ground, y'all. It's brand new. And what I'm doing is I'm calling it Money from Speaking. It's 3 months, and we meet every couple of weeks. There's 3 different levels to it, but at the basic level of it, we meet every couple of weeks and we work in the program straight away. So I'm cutting through all of the noise, because there's a lot of stuff I can teach you, but over the years I've got to see there's a handful of things that get you the biggest impact. And if I give you homework, it's probably going to get done about 20 minutes before the next call, just by default. So I thought, right, how do I get past all of these things? We're doing 90-minute sessions every couple of weeks, and we're working in the session. So it's going to be a case of, here's 30 minutes of learning. This is what we're doing now. We'll dissect it. I'm going to make it as easy, as simple as possible. Now you've got this time set aside in your diary. You've got 45 minutes. Get it done. Just get it done now. I don't want any excuses. I don't want anybody getting to the end of the program not being able to say they've got progress. And all I'm going to focus on is not everything I know, the key things that will move the needle the most for you right now, so that we're actually in motion. And there's something I read recently, which is our brains don't like unfinished activities. We just don't operate very well with that. Might not be finished. So I kind of know the homework will get done. Like, if you haven't finished in that 45 minutes, you'll make time to get it done, because it's just going to be nicking at you, right? But I'll make opportunities available for those who've got more time and want to dive a little bit deeper. So it's a brand new program. If anybody's interested in it, what I can do is put a link in for a discovery call. We can jump on a call. I can talk you through the details and the different levels of the program. Depending on when you're listening to this, it starts on the 31st of March, 2021. If you've caught it a bit later, you can still book a call with me, but we may be talking about a different program.
If it's 2023 when you're listening to this, then it's probably not.
It may still be around then, if you're listening in the future, it might still be around, but you may find that the discovery call link should remain the same. And therefore, if you book a call in with me, we can explore different options, and I can tell you what's available like now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I will share all of those details in the notes to the podcast, so that people can find you and can have a conversation with you if they've been inspired to get their shit together, basically. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm really conscious of time. I don't want to keep you past the allotted time. So is there anything else that you really want to share with people before we close?
I think if there was like one message I could leave people with who are listening, it would be that your voice counts.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do ourselves, our families, the world at whole a benefit by not making an attempt, at least, to get our voice out into greater spaces such that other people can have an impact. Is it scary? Yes. And I'm saying that from where I am right now. I watched something in December and I was terrified as all hell. So just understand, everybody's a bit terrified.
Yeah.
Everybody's a bit terrified, but that's not a reason not to use your voice in order to have a greater impact, because people are watching and what you're doing is inspiring people, whether they tell you or not.
Yeah, for sure. You know, all it takes is one person, you know, to be watching, listening, and to get inspired. So yeah, really great message to end it on. Well, thank you so much for that. I think it was a really interesting conversation, and certainly really connected a few dots for me. So really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And yeah, I hope that everybody watching, listening has enjoyed this episode. I don't see why you wouldn't have. And I really look forward to speaking to you all again on the next episode of the Uncaged podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye for now.